My name is Jordan Redfield Wade. By day, I'm a philanthropist and private investigator, but by night, I protect the people of New York City in a different way.
My name, champ, is RedWing.
As she lay dying, I promised my mother that I would fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and I refused to let her down. I am the defender of New York City. I am RedWing. I think I should tell you a bit more about my childhood. Tell you more about how I became who I am now. I learned how to read when I was 4. I wasn't reading your simple see, spot, run books, because I found those to be quite boring. My mother taught me to read by reading me Sherlock Holmes every night before bed. I was always enthralled by the mind of Holmes, how he could spot even the smallest thing that would change the entire meaning of a case. I admired his intelligence and his desire to improve his own mind. My mother continued to read with me right on up until she couldn't anymore. The only 2 Sherlock Holmes stories that she never read for me were The Final Problem and The Adventure of the Room. I found out later that those were, also, the defeat and subsequent return of Sherlock Holmes. I didn't read those until college, but I have to think that meant something. My mother, Malia, started out as a mathematician, chemist, and physicist when she met my dad. She was widely recognized to be a genius. She was featured in magazines praising her achievements. Her personal passion was getting young women into the STEM fields, combating sexism and the racial influences that prevented people from thinking they were worthy enough and capable of achieving these fields. She was dear friends with Joanna's mother, Amory, who was an engineer and molecular physicist. Their friendship mirrors the one that Joanna and I have today. Amory Lovelace mysteriously disappeared and is presumed dead, and that happened when I was 9. She left only a note for my mother. My mother never revealed that note to anyone. My father, Terrence, wouldn't read novels to me at night. He would read comic books to me during the early evening. He would take me to the comic book shops every week to buy the latest comics, particularly if a new Batman issue was out. He loved The Dark Knight and The Boy Wonder, and he passed that love on to me. I still love Batman to this day. One year for Halloween, my dad went as Batman, my mom went as Batwoman, and I went as Robin. I still have this photo. I keep it framed beside my bed at all times. Another thing my father was good at was chess. No one could beat him, except for my mother. The only reason he wasn't a world champion was because he never entered a competition. He had an eye for tactics and maneuvering that would have impressed even the goddess Athena. He carried that into his business practices as well. He was a shrewd businessman, running the Redfield Wade Collective from the time he was 22 until I guess we'll get there. I remember one conversation with my father about Batman. I was 5 years old at the time. Uncle Jared and Aunt Amory, as I called them, and Joe had just left after joining us for dinner, and my father was reading Justice League on the couch.
Daddy?
Yes, Jordy?
I want to be a detective, like Uncle Jared.
Really?
A strange look passed over his face, and he set the comic book down. He pulled me to sit on his knee.
All right, up you get. What makes you say that?
Well, I want to be like Batman. Batman is the world's greatest detective, and I want to be the world's greatest detective.
And why do you want to be the world's greatest detective? What if you were just a really, really good one?
He poked my nose, and I giggled.
Because, Daddy, I want to keep the city safe. Just like Batman keeps Gotham safe. Just like Superman protects the Earth, but smarter. I want to make a difference. Just like you and Mama. Just like Uncle Jay does every day. He helps people. That's what I want to do. Help keep people safe and help them do the right thing.
There was silence. I turned to look at my dad, and I saw a single tear roll down his cheek, but he was smiling from ear to ear. He ruffled my hair and then gripped me into a tight bear hug.
You don't know how proud I am of you, Jordy.
Later that night, I heard my parents talking. I had gotten up from sleep and was on my way to the bathroom when I heard them in their room.
I know he's not ready, but I also know that he will be. I know he will rise to the task. We should make sure he's ready.
It's dangerous, Terry. You know that. This entire city is dangerous. Can't we just take him somewhere where there isn't as much danger?
You know we can't, my love. I promised you I would give up when we had him, and I did. But this is still part of my family's duty. We are bound to this place. This is where we are sworn to protect.
Don't take him down there until he's truly ready. You cannot tell him. He has to choose it for himself. We have raised him well, and I have no doubt he'll make us proud. But what if what Cassandra says winds up being true, and we aren't around to show him?
They went quiet at that moment, and I carefully walked back to my room and climbed into bed. I only faintly remember hearing that conversation. I didn't know then what they were talking about. The worst night of my life, the night everything changed, came when I was 10 years old. I had begged my mom and dad to take me to the store, even though they didn't think it was such a great idea. They wound up being right. My mother and father and I were walking back from the comic book store, and I was clutching a copy of the Dick Grayson Detective series, as well as a few other Batman comics that I had yet to read. My parents were laughing at how excited I was. The street we were on was practically dead. We had thought we were the only ones on the street, until 3 figures appeared from behind a tree. I froze, and my parents stepped in front of me. The man in the middle spoke.
You will not resist me, Redfield Wades.
It was dark and I couldn't see his face. My parents visibly shook for a moment before straightening up. My mother looked at me and spoke.
Jordan, I need you to run.
I wanted to run. I tried to run, but I couldn't. I didn't move. I was frozen to the spot.
Boys, secure Mr. and Mrs. Wade, please.
The 2 masked goons with guns did as they were told. My mother and father didn't put up any resistance. I couldn't believe what was happening.
Both of you, get on your knees.
They listened, and the man put the barrel of a golden gun against my father's head.
This is for what you did to my wife.
Spare my son. Please.
Oh, I won't kill him, Terry. I may be a villain, but I'm not that evil. No. This is an eye for an eye situation.
There was a loud, sharp pop, and my father fell to the ground, dead. The man turned to my mother and shot her in the chest. She fell down next to my father, and just like that, I was orphaned. Both my parents were gone in an instant. It took me about 30 seconds to realize that I was screaming. The man with the golden gun looked at me and pointed his gun in my direction. I closed my eyes tightly. A sudden calm came over me, and I felt something break inside of me, like a small green plant breaking through the asphalt. I opened my eyes, and everything was tinted a slight bloody red. I held up my hand towards the man with the gun. A sphere appeared around the gun and the man's hand. I twisted my hand to the side, and the man's wrist snapped painfully to one side. I squeezed my hand shut, and the sphere disappeared, along with the gun and the man's hand. The man held up his now bleeding stump and let out a blood-curdling roar. The 2 thugs took off running, and the man who formerly had owned the golden gun turned and followed. A drop of blood fell from my nose and splashed onto the pavement. I fell to my knees and began to weep from rage, sorrow, and utter confusion. I couldn't even bear to look at my father, so I kneeled next to my mother. I checked to see if she was still breathing. She was miraculously still breathing slightly. though her breath was labored and a constant struggle to maintain. She was looking up at the night sky, and then looked over at me. She held a bloody hand to my cheek and gave me a weak smile. When she spoke, it was almost a whisper.
Always remember that I love you and that we are proud of you. You have a gift. Protect this city like your father did. But you must find your...
And then she spoke no more. I wailed loudly for what felt like hours. I cried all of the air out of my lungs and screamed the energy out of my system. When I came to, I was in the hospital, and Jared Lovelace was shaking me awake. He looked concerned.
Jordan? Oh, thank God you're alive.
His eyes were puffy and red, like he had been crying.
Uncle Jared? Where am I?
You're in the hospital, Jordan.
I was loopy. For a minute, I'd forgotten what happened, like it was all a bad dream.
Oh, Jay, I'm so sorry.
In a sudden flash, I remembered what had happened. A tear slowly ran down my face, but I didn't really have the energy to cry any more than that.
I know you're probably in the worst pain you'll ever feel. I want you to know that Joanna and I are here for you. In fact, you'll be coming home with us when you leave here.
I looked at him confused.
Your father, in the event of an emergency, he put me in charge of you. As his oldest friend, he chose to name me your legal guardian in just a case like, well, this one. Did you see the man that was responsible for this?
No. I didn't. I mean, he had a black mask, but he was wearing a suit and had a golden gun.
That sounds, well, I don't know.
He put his head in his hands and then ran them through his hair.
Don't worry, Jordan. My team will find him. I promise.
I didn't believe him. I couldn't believe him. But what I did believe is that he would try. I chose in that moment to not tell him about what had happened after they had died. About the power that I had shown. I learned that I was in the hospital for symptoms of exhaustion. I figured that using that power had probably drained me, and that using it further would be pointless unless I could use it without passing out. I moved in with the Lovelaces when I left the hospital. I shared a room with Joanna, who did her best to comfort me when I woke up screaming in the middle of the night for the first month. Bless her. The best friend I could ever ask for. I thought an awful lot about my parents, and what my mother had meant with her last words. I focused on the protecting the city aspect, but I was just a kid and didn't think I could make much of a difference in the way things happened. At least, not till I was much older and a detective. My parents listed in their living will that ownership of all Redfield Wade collective companies and the Redfield Wade estate would be transferred to me, effective immediately upon their death. I would have to attend monthly board meetings for the Redfield Wade collective, and Jared would come with me and help me sign off on the papers. I assumed it was with this collective that they wanted me to do good, but I knew I wouldn't be satisfied with that. A business assistant was hired to assist me with the more complicated aspects of things. So I suppose I did exert a certain amount of control, but it was hard to determine the importance of certain aspects of business. Anyway, when I was 14, I had started working out more and more, not wanting to be seen as weak. At the time, I wasn't really growing any muscle, but I was always just a little bit stronger and faster than the other boys my age. I was getting perfect grades, and I was focused. I was also a semi-popular wealthy teenager, and therefore I could not be antisocial. I had friends, or at least I had classmates that liked me. One day, I was waiting outside the school. Joe had to stay after to help our friend Kieran with something in chemistry. Kieran was the only person who could go toe-to-toe with Joanna in certain aspects of scientific knowledge, so they complemented each other and also agitated each other deeply. They were in a strange but friendly competition, and I got tired of waiting in the room for them, so I decided to wait outside. While I was sitting outside, I came across a group of older boy thugs picking on a younger boy who looked to be about my age. It looked as though they were about to escalate the violence. One of the boys was holding a bat and the other was holding a knife. In that second, I had to make a decision. I could go home, I could remain uninvolved, I could turn my back and ignore it, or I could do what a hero would do. If I left now, no one would ever have to know. I'm sure the kid would be fine, right? They wouldn't be dumb enough to murder someone on the street, would they? Let alone on school campus. I mean, this guy's problem had nothing to do with me, so why should I get involved? And then I remembered what my parents said. And in turn, I thought of Batman. I was, like Batman, an orphan. One day I wanted to be the world's finest detective, and today I would make my first stand. I would not sit idly by and watch a boy my age get bullied and threatened.
Leave him alone.
I tried to use as much authority as I could muster, which admittedly was not a lot. I stepped in between the bullies and the boy.
Well, if it isn't little spoiled orphan Annie. Aren't we lucky boys? We got a 2-for-1 special.
The central bully was wearing brass knuckles. These boys couldn't be more than 17. Where in the smooth hell did they get these weapons?
Step aside, rich boy. This doesn't concern you.
I can't do that.
You can just go, Jordan. It's fine. I'll be fine, it's fine.
Shut up, faggot.
I must have known this kid from class, but I couldn't remember his name. I scrunched up my fist.
Apologize to him, or you will regret it.
What? Are you gonna fight me? Don't make me laugh. You just a weak little rich bitch. You wanna stand up for your little boyfriend there? Bet you're a fag too.
Real original, jackass. Besides, don't act like you don't jack off thinking about your two friends right there. Too bad neither of them would want to be near you. Your breath smells like something from the bottom of the sewer.
Probably not the brightest thing that I've ever said, but it wasn't necessarily a lie. I am an observant person. It's kind of my thing, much like Sherlock Holmes. Brass Knuckles took a swing at me, and I suddenly remembered that I didn't actually know how to fight. I ducked back, the blow narrowly missing my cheek. I shot my fist up toward his chin and it connected, though I could have sworn I heard my hand splinter on contact with his face. I let out a cry of pain and clutched my hand. Great. Real strong. Brass Knuckle Boy turned his head and spit out a little blood. I'd made some sort of cut in his mouth, and I felt a little proud of myself. He used my moment of distraction with my hand to deliver a quick punch to my gut, causing me to bend forward. He put a hand on the back of my head and drove his knee up into my chin. His knee caught my nose instead, and my head flew back, and I landed on my back. I was seeing stars. The three boys began mercilessly kicking me. The pain was intense, and my nose was bleeding profusely. I also definitely would have a black eye the next day. My hand pulsed and throbbed. I wanted them to stop.
Hey, big guy.
Brass Knuckle Boy turned around to see who had called out, and I looked up to see a boy deliver a kick to Brass Knuckles' ear. He spun around and hit the ground, unconscious. The new guy delivered an elbow jab to the boy with the bat's solar plexus, which he followed with the backside of his fist hitting Bat Boy in the nose. He grabbed the bat from the stunned Bat Boy and swung it at Knife Boy, clocking him in the cheek and knocking him out. He swung at Bat Boy and knocked him out as well. In about 10 seconds, all 3 boys were taken out by this one boy. I stared in awe and admiration at this guy. He looked to be about 16 years old. He had chestnut-colored hair and emerald green eyes.
Hey, you okay?
I nodded, but I was a little too dizzy to respond right away.
You are equal parts brave and stupid, aren't you?
I tried to get back on my feet, but had to take a knee.
Will you be okay? You're kind of bleeding from your head.
I touched my eyebrow and realized I was bleeding. Good God, that was unsettling. I still nodded at him, but this time I finally spoke.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Who are you?
My name is Dean Morgan. And you?
Of course it was. Dean Morgan. What a dreamy name. Pretty name for a pretty face.
Really? You don't recognize me?
Can't say I do, but then again, you are bleeding from the face.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm Jordan. Jordan Redfield Wade.
Oh, cool. Well, kid, if you're okay, I'm gonna head off now. Stay out of trouble, alright?
And with that, he turned and walked away. Pretty quickly. In my mind, he left little clouds of dust behind him with how fast he ran. What an angel of mercy he was. I turned and looked at the boy that I'd taken a stand for, but he was gone from my sight. But you know who wasn't out of my sight? A very worried and agitated Joanna, her dirty blonde ponytail trailing behind her.
Oh my God, Jordan, are you okay? What in the sweet actual hell happened out there?
She knelt by my side and helped me stand. We started to walk together, starting to cross the street to get on a bus.
Well, I took a stand on something.
Are you out of your goddamn mind? I saw you trying to fight those goons from the classroom. They were seniors, Jay. Seniors. And might I add, buff ones at that? Were you trying to get killed? They had a bat and a knife. Also, where did that kid even get brass knuckles? You could have been...
Joe's words were drowned out by honking. A car was careening for us, and both Joe and I saw it. Just as the car was about to strike us down, I blinked. When my eyes opened, everything was tinted red. I held up my hand. A red force field appeared around myself and Joe. The car collided with the force field, its hood buckling into an unstable heap of parts. I felt the pain in my chest when this happened, and I immediately blacked out. While I was out, I had a dream. I dreamed I was sitting in the graveyard near my parents' headstones. My mother and father were there with me. My dad had his hand on my shoulder, and my mother was holding my hand.
Darling, you have to go back. Wake up.
Will I ever be able to use this power without it killing me?
There's power in the soil of the ancestors.
What?
My mom kissed my forehead, and I woke up. When I came to, I was in the hospital again. I had stitches above my right eyebrow, and an IV in my arm. Jo was sitting beside my bed. When I woke up, she started, and she tensed up in her seat. I thought that was a weird reaction to seeing me wake up from just passing out.
Hey, how long have I been out?
About an hour. So, okay, what the great white fuck was that thing you did?
What thing?
I was genuinely having a bit of difficulty remembering. Things were still pretty hazy.
That damn bubbly thing? The force field?
I suddenly remembered exactly what had happened, and then it was my turn to start tensing up.
It's nothing. I'm just crazy.
No, you're not, because I saw that thing too, and it's obviously a force field of some kind. How did you do it, and for how long have you had this power?
It's nothing at all.
I lied, and Joanna gave me the look that told me that if I didn't stop lying to her, I may wind up in a body bag. Growing up together as best friends, I'd seen this look more than once. This time, however, I was spared by Jared charging into the room. I was too tired to really react. Jared nearly tore the IV out of my arm, pulling me up for a hug. I groaned and he loosened his grip.
Don't scare me like that. Ever again. They couldn't tell me what happened. They just told me you were in an accident and you were bleeding.
To be fair, he was bleeding before... I mean, okay, after I pulled him out of the way, he hit his head on the sidewalk. Actually, Jordan decided it would be a good idea to fight some upperclassmen, and as you can clearly see, they really screwed him up.
Why were you fighting people? You were always the gentle kid.
They were beating up a kid in my grade. I don't remember what that guy's name is, but it looked like they were really gonna hurt him this time. I couldn't just let that happen. I know it was stupid, but it's what my dad would have done.
I saw a flicker of pride cross Jared's face, and it faded into a stern face.
That was reckless. You don't know how to defend yourself, let alone another person.
Look, I agree. And speaking of that, I think it's time I start taking some private martial arts classes. If I'm going to become a detective, I should learn to fight now. Give myself a leg up, you know?
Only if you promise to not go challenging all the random school bullies. Good God, what if one of them had a knife?
Oh, one of them did, and a bat, and brass knuckles too, which I thought was real weird.
She trailed off and rolled her eyes.
I've got to go talk to the doctor, see how long they want you in bed. You both stay here.
Jared, where exactly am I gonna go? I'm attached to an IV.
Oh, right. Forgot for a second. You're not going anywhere.
Look, Joe, I've had this gift since my parents died. I don't use it because it makes me this exhausted. You see what just one shield did to me.
Okay, this is so weird. I mean, I know all those superheroes from your books were like your idols, but they were fictional. I just wonder, do you think this kind of thing is genetic?
Honestly, I have no idea. If they did, I don't know why they wouldn't have used their powers that night to save their own lives.
That's a good question. I don't think it's smart to have this thing that you can do if it hurts you to use it. It could do a lot of good, especially when you become a detective.
I was hearing her tone and identifying a part of it, the part that indicated she was hatching a plan.
Joe?
Well, I guess you're gonna have to train. I'm gonna try to look into this and see what the power is drawing on, and if we can figure that out, we'll know what to train.
But why? Why are you helping me with this power, though?
For the briefest moment, Joe looked offended that I would even ask her that. She's my best friend, of course she would help me. Joe put her elbows on her knees and ran her fingers over her nose and forehead, letting out a huge sigh.
Because you saved our lives today. You saved that kid today. You risked your own life to try and protect someone who needed it. And if that's not a hero, I don't know what is. If that's what's needed to be a hero, then I want to help.
Okay.
I got out of the hospital that night, but my hand was in a cast for a few days or so. I've always healed relatively quickly. Jo did her best to research the occult origins of my power. She got frustrated because it wasn't purely scientific, but a lot of ancient superstitions. So she made up her own theory. The night my cast came off, Joanna came into my bedroom and sat on my bed.
Okay, as far as I can find, magic is just like a special kind of energy being transferred, converted, and reflected. Our body stores energy in our cells and in our muscles and things like that. You've only used your power in intense moments of stress directly tied to adrenaline. So let's see if that happens if you try it now. Sit on the bed and make a bubbly thing around this basketball.
I sat in my desk chair and focused intently on the ball. I visualized a sphere appearing, saw the faintest glimmer of red around the ball, and I pushed a little harder. I saw it appear and then felt my nose begin to bleed. I dropped the field and had to take a breather.
All right, I have an idea, but this may not make a whole lot of sense. We need to go to the estate. I read something about energy and meditation.
I hesitated. I hadn't really been back there since my parents had died. But Jo put her hand on my shoulder and handed me a tissue.
It's okay, Jordan. I'll be right there with you.
About 30 minutes later, we were at the estate. As soon as I stepped through the front door, I felt something was different about the energy of the place. I sat on the staircase in the entryway. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath.
I feel something here. I can't explain it, but it feels strong.
All right. Now I want you to breathe in slowly and out gently. Picture tree roots going into the ground. Imagine your body is filling up through the roots with that energy that you feel here, just like a plant.
I visualized the energy, and what's more, I felt it fill my body. It felt red. The energy felt and looked distinctly red to me in my mind. I suppose that meant it was the right kind of energy for me. When I had just about filled myself up, I opened my eyes.
I think I've got this.
I held up my hand and imagined a red orb appearing in my hand. It appeared and replied without question and without resistance. My eyes flickered with a red light for a second. The shield's surface was a swirling mass of rich red energy. I smiled and expanded it, moving it to float near Joe. Joanna reached out to touch it, and it responded by slightly shocking her hand.
Ow! Hey, watch it with that thing! Okay, see if you can solidify the outer shell.
I pictured the shell of the orb and told it to start to solidify. It obliged, and when Joe grabbed it and squeezed, it held its shape. I closed my hand, and the orb evaporated.
Well, I'll be damned, it's solid. Like diamond solid.
That's good to know. I feel like this will come in handy at some point.
I didn't know how right I would be. I got myself several martial arts trainers that year. I took up meditation to learn how to control this energy inside of me. I learned how to use almost every kind of weapon that possibly piqued my fancy. My favorite was this dart attached to a really long rope. I got very good at using that. I slowly amassed a collection of these darts. I kept up my training well into college. Around age 18, I decided to take parkour and gymnastics, as well as circus acrobatics. To be honest, parkour did make sense to me, especially if I was going to join the police force. But acrobatics and gymnastics were added on because I was reading Dick Grayson Origins. It seemed kind of right. I never wound up seeing those bullies again, or the kid that they were picking on, but in my junior year at Arc University, I met Dean again. I was taking the police academy classes at night, and he was in my classes. I was immediately quite taken with him, especially since he'd gotten only more handsome as time went on. Oh, right, some important facts about my life. The same year that I learned how to use my power was the year that I came out as gay to my entire class, and also to Jared and Joanna. Jared handled it well, probably because Joanna had told him that she was a lesbian when we were like 8 years old. So when I encountered Dean again, I was much more confident. I asked him out on a date. He didn't respond at first, and I had thought that I might have made a mistake. Perhaps he wasn't also gay. He then smiled, and he accepted. We went to an Italian restaurant in Revenant Heights called La Gardenia, and then we went on a moonlight stroll down by the piers. That was where he kissed me for the first time. It was mind-blowing, and all I could do for days after was smile. I was the luckiest guy in the world. We dated for 5 years after that. We both graduated from college, the police academy, and joined the force together. I left the force after about a year, having done enough time to go into private detective work. But Dean stayed on, and Jared promoted him for his excellent work. Dean was my best friend, and I loved him with all of my heart. I could tell most days that he did too, even though we fought every once in a while. I did have to keep some secrets, though, namely my powers. I started getting cases that required some things that weren't strictly above board, and I would have to keep them from him as well. The secrets for him were a real issue. We almost moved in together. I was actually about to propose to him the day we broke up. The day he cheated on me with some lame-looking guy with greasy hair and weird eyes. There was something familiar about that guy, but I was too heartbroken to see past the basic fact that the love of my life was quite literally inside of another man. I stopped speaking to him at that point, and I avoided the station for months after that. About 4 months after that, I was in my detective agency. My agency was across the street from Joanna's job at RWC's Blackburn Labs. Jared, who is now police commissioner, was delivering paperwork after I'd helped him locate a runaway teenager. As soon as he left my agency, I heard a commotion outside the store. I jumped up and ran out the door. I saw a crazed-looking man with a gun. He looked high as a kite. He was pointing the gun at Jared's chest. I was able to reach out my hand in time to block the first shot with a field, but the second shot hit Jared's shoulder. Jared fell back and hit his head on the pavement, knocking himself out. The man started to run, but I placed a force field in just the right spot to trip him. The man tripped and subsequently knocked himself out on the ground as well. I got out my phone and pressed the speed dial button for Joanna, but I saw her running out of the lab towards her father's side. She was screaming, but she didn't touch him.
Dad! Dad!
Joe, careful. It hit his shoulder. The bullet is still in there. Call 911, and then I think I have an idea.
Joe dialed 911 and gave the location. There was no one outside, because it was pretty late in the afternoon on a Wednesday in the middle of summer and in College Center. I looked at Joe and nodded.
I think I can pull the bullet out and make the wound patch itself up.
How? What?
The night my folks died, the guy lost a hand. I vaporized it and the gun along with it. I think I can do the reverse of that and piece Jared's shoulder back together, atom by atom.
Jay, I love you, but I don't think this is the time to be testing these kinds of things out randomly.
Joe, I love you, but we don't have a choice. I have to try.
I held my hand out above Jared's shoulder, forming a small shield over the wound. I closed my eyes for a second and envisioned what I wanted to have happen. Slowly the bullet disintegrated and the wound began to patch itself together. The veins that had broken rejoined, the muscle was sewn back together. A drop of blood fell out of my nose. That hadn't happened at that point for a long time. Turns out that healing gunshot wounds with minimal practice would expend a lot of energy. I noted that I would need to refill my energy storage soon.
Whoa.
I grabbed the handcuffs from Jared's belt and ran over to the criminal who had shot my adoptive dad. I snapped the cuffs around his wrist. I made him look up at me and open his eyes. I heard wailing sirens coming toward us.
Okay, fucker, who sent you?
The man did not reply. He simply gazed ahead. His eyes were unfocused, and again he still looked high as a kite. His head lolled from side to side like a drunken coconut. I didn't smell alcohol on him, but I did smell a strange perfume-like smell. I couldn't place what that smell actually was, but I knew it was there and I had smelled it before, but I couldn't remember where. I let him drop to the ground as the ambulance turned the corner. I made a statement to the cop about the man who had attacked Jared and him being on some kind of crazy drug. I recommended that Jared get checked out for a concussion. Later that day, he would be sent home and told to rest for a day or so. I went and meditated at the estate, restoring my energy, and then I went home to the apartment that I shared with Joanna. When Jo came home, I sat her down and we had a chat about what I saw as an inevitable thing.
Jo, this is going to sound insane, I know, but I've thought a lot about it. I don't know what prompted today's shooting, but I don't think it had to do with Jared exclusively. I think whoever sent that man, because of course he was sent there, was coming after me. They were looking for a way to hurt me, in a way I'd never be able to recover from. Regardless of that, this was a shooting in College Center. Violent crime and attempted murder are usually contained to Revenant Heights and the harbor. Look, I've told you before what my mother said, and that my mother said I need to defend this city and protect it. Well, I think I've started to let her down. This is exactly the kind of thing she'd want me to prevent. This city needs something else. Something to hold it together and defend it. Something to remind them that there is hope here. Or maybe that this city is worth it. But that thing can no longer put my family in danger. If anything ever happened to you or Jared, I need to protect the city and the people in my life that I love. I need to become something greater than just Jordan, the heir to the Redfield Wade Collective. I need to be something bigger and better. Something with a name that speaks of life and shadows. Something that strikes fear into the hearts of those who would hurt anyone in this city. And something that fills the inhabitants of this city with hope.
Jordan, are you saying what I think you're saying?
I nodded gravely.
You want to be a vigilante crime fighter?
Well, yeah.
You know that's illegal, right? And you know Dad would kill you, right?
Look, you said it yourself, remember? I'm a hero. You said it when we were 14. And 13 years later, here we are. End of the day, he would want me to defend this city with everything I have. I suppose I knew this day would have to come, where I'd have to make this decision. What good is having this power if I can't use it to help people?
Jo was silent for a few minutes. She looked at the spot on the wall just above the dresser, where a picture of us on our high school graduation day was hung. Jared was standing between us, beaming with pride. He was in his officer's uniform. I was in red robes, and Jo was in white robes. I saw a tear roll partway down her cheek before she brushed it away quickly. She stood up and wrapped me in a bear hug. I hugged back, still unsure what she would say next. When she let me go and looked at me, she had a determined half-smile.
Well, then you're going to need me. Someone who can make sure that you don't get yourself killed out there. I have enough hardware and software to be your eyes and ears almost anywhere in the city.
She got up and went to her computer.
Alright, we're gonna need to make some purchases, and...
She stood back up again and grabbed the graduation photo.
You're gonna need a suit. I'm not much of a designer, but I know you, and I think I have an idea of what you need in terms of tech. It'll take a few days, but I think you're gonna be pleased with the result. And there is just one last thing. What's gonna be your name?
I thought about it for a moment. I looked at the photo from our graduation. I thought about the color of my force fields. And I thought about Batman and Robin. In all honesty, I thought I wasn't jaded enough or revengey enough to be Batman, but I am also nobody's boy wonder. And then it came to me. Dick Grayson, after Robin, became Nightwing. And that is when another memory hit me like a brick. I ran into my room and pulled out an image from my drawer. It was an illustration of my family's crest. The night before my parents had died, my dad had shown me the family crest for the first time. Featured prominently on my family crest is the image of a blackbird, with a red and gold wing bar and crimson feathers scattered amongst the obsidian ones. The bird was in flight, shooting up into the sky, wings spread. This bird is the Aegelius phoenixus, the red-winged blackbird. And then the name that I should choose became obvious to me. I will be RedWing.
Why that name?
This is the family crest of the Redfield Wades. I think it should be at the center.
Oh, I can work with this for a design. Give it a week, and we'll have you ready to go in no time.
A week later, Jo and I went to the estate after dark. The suit was ready, and I was ready as well. And something about the situation felt as though it called for that location. Jo held up the bag she'd brought the suit in. I went upstairs, while she stayed in the foyer. She sat and opened her laptop. She figured tonight would be a great night to have me go out for the first time, and she would be my eyes and ears.
So, how does it look?
I called from the top of the stairs. Jo turned and looked up. Her jaw dropped. before turning into a wide grin. The suit was made of pleather and spandex. It was mostly black, with a red and gold-shaped V pattern on my chest. The chest and abdominal region were emblazoned with red Kevlar. The utility belt had my family crest emblazoned on it, as well as a larger one in the center of my chest. My mask was your standard domino mask, but the eyes were angled like that of a bird, or a Venetian mask, with a red gem in the middle of the top of it. On my leg there was a holster containing extra darts. On my utility belt there is a spot for my special custom dart. My dart is a shiny black kunai with gold etchings on it. My favorite part is that the handle is 2 circling golden wings. The thing was a little heavy, and it was made with dark steel. Dark steel is a hybrid metal that shines like obsidian, but is the strongest material known in all of the world. It is very rare, but of course I've had this one since high school. The rope was sturdy enough to take my full weight. No lie, I looked amazing.
God damn, Jay. I don't even have words. You look great. Maybe I should go into design.
You really think so? I'm quite pleased with it.
Here, take these.
She passed me a little device for my ear, and a little thing that looked like a tooth cap. I raised my eyebrow.
Oh, the cap is to distort your voice, just so no one recognizes you. I mean, the hair is a slight giveaway, but I don't know. I feel like people won't notice. Anyway, that gem is a camera in the center of the forehead that I have access to. I'll be your eyes and ears pretty much all over.
Sounds good. You think we should test this out now? As I asked her, her phone buzzed.
Look at that. Speak of the devil. 14 blocks from here, a mugging. Go for it, man. We've got this.
I nodded and opened the front door. Before I knew it, I was running down an alley and realized it could be much safer if I was just on the roof. For the first time, I used my rope dart to help me swing up towards the roof. I ran along the rooftops. It was in that moment that I knew it was right. I was doing what I was meant to do. And ever since then, I have been RedWing, the defender of Newark City. Thank you for listening to RedWing, the audio drama podcast. RedWing is written, directed, and produced by J.V. Hampton Van Sant. That's me. The cast of RedWing includes J.V. Hampton Van Sant, Amanda Jacobson, Chris Green, Dane Shiner, Simon Weeks, Christine Osimo, Skylar Paring, John Buckley, Brittany Nicholson, Lucy Fitzgerald, Kenyon Lang, Katie Hearn Church, Nathan Foster, Atticus Jackson, Rhett Hall, and Kiara Jeter as Birdkeeper. RedWing's official musician extraordinaire is Nico from We Talk of Dreams. Additional music from Kevin MacLeod. The RedWing logo is designed by J.V. Hampton Van Sant, and official character art is from the fantastic Click Art Studios. We would like to thank the following shows for being inspirations and or being involved in the podcast itself. Wine and Crime, Crime and Color, Queen's Podcast, Brain Trust Brothers Podcast, Gravity Beard, the No Sleep Podcast, Conjuria, The Cryptid Keeper, Deliberations, Getting Off Podcast, Spirits Podcast, the entire family at Blazing Caribou Studios, and everyone in the #AudioDramaSunday family. If you would like to support the show, buy official RedWing merchandise, or if you just want to stay in touch, all of our links are in the show notes and on our website, redwingpodcast.com. Be well, stay safe, and fly high, heroes.